Hey up everybody, welcome back to the I'll Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Velogames Fleche Wallonne. Apologies for the sunlight, but it's just souped. It's too much of a nice day in Yorkshire here apparently for this recording, so we're just going to make do with it. Of course, we're taking a look at the Super Classico 6s, the Classic Squad Game and also the Women's event, because there's a competition available for all three of these. But let's take a look firstly at the Super Classico event. Of course, we've got Fleche here, who is the out-and-out favourite for this race, despite the fact that he's never really done that well in this race before for some reason, which I can't quite fathom. But he is still the favourite, and you can still make a very good team with him. Of course, you could go with a strategy where you don't pick him, you try and spread your points out a little bit more evenly. But for me, I feel like it's just safer to pick Fleche, because you never know when he's going to just kind of like break his trend. Like, even though he's never really finished inside the top 10 here, I don't think he might have finished like top 10 but like lower down. I still think that he's a pretty good pick and very safe for you to be picking. Mohoric doesn't really suit this race, so I'd be avoiding him. Pidcock's an interesting one, considering that he was third at Amstel, but he did get dropped by Fleche. However, this race is a little bit shorter, and I think suits his characteristics a bit more. So I think that Pidcock is a good choice for you to be putting onto your teams. There are some good lower point riders for you to try and balance this out if you wanted to pick him and Fleche. Barguil has done well in this race in the past, but hasn't quite shown the form recently to really be warrant picking, so I'm going to say probably no to that. Tiege Benoot, the best he's finished in this race is 11th, and that was last year, of which he was also in good form, and I just don't really think that he's the greatest value for money rider. I think that perhaps there are some other ones who are a little bit cheaper who are actually going to probably finish better than he does, but he is probably still a pretty safe bet for the top 15. Cosnefroy has finished on the podium in this race before, so could certainly do that again. I'm not sure how representative that Amstel Gold Race result was. I think that he is still in really good form. Perhaps he was just out of position or something in Amstel, we don't really know. I think Cosnefroy is still a good choice. Enric Mas is an interesting one because he kind of does well on some steep finishes, like think back to the Vuelta and stuff, he does well on these, but he hasn't quite shown the brilliant form that I was kind of expecting so far this season. So I think that a top 10 is still very possible for Mas. He should be the leader for Movistar, I expect, but I think approach him with a bit of caution, because I think that he could also just do like nothing more, like that's also a possibility. Arambarou, I think, will be working for Mas. Higuita's an interesting one. Of the two times that he's taken part in this race, he has DNF'd both of them, which isn't the greatest signs in the world. But he is a rider who suits this race. They do also have Jai Hindley here, who is a lot cheaper if you wanted to have a different option for Bora. But I think that Higuita is still a decent pick. It's just kind of, he's DNF'd this race before, so I'm not really sure how he goes on this race. He just, in theory, suits this race. And, you know, he looked good at Basque Country. He looked pretty good there. He's got a pretty snappy finish as well, so I think that he does suit this race quite well. Madouas, I think, will be working for Godou. Mollema has done well in this race in the past, but of the 11 times that he's competed, he's finished 5 times in the top 10, and I don't think any of those were in the side of the top 5, so I don't think he's the greatest choice, to be honest with you. Ulissi will probably be working for Fleche, be a domestique. Bardet hasn't looked that great. Bilbao was ill at Basque Country. Godou could be a decent shout. I think that he, again, similar to Higuita, has the characteristics of somebody who should be doing well in this race, but, you know, he DNF'd Amstel, don't know why that was, I don't know if he was involved in that crash, but he is in good form, and I think that he is still going to be a good choice for a lot of teams. I've got him on my Classic Squad Game, actually. I'm not sure if I'm willing to commit to this race, though, for the Super Classico. Hirschi will be a domestique. Mikel Frolicanore isn't that great of a pick. Mollard will be a domestique. Mike Woods is very good at this race. The last 3 editions, he's always finished inside the top 10. You know, he did finish inside the top 10 in GC at Basque Country, or it might have been Catalonia. It was one of them. He's looked in pretty decent form, basically, is what I'm saying. And I think that he could be a bit of a surprise. I think that people perhaps sleep on Woods a little bit because he doesn't have the most consistent results all the time, especially in like stage races. But in one-day races, especially ones like La Fleche Wallonne, he is actually still very good. So I think that Woods is a decent shout for 18, but again, a little bit expensive. So, you know, I could understand if you didn't want to pick him. Landa, I think, is a good choice at 16. He's looked really strong so far this season. I think he'll be the leader for Bahrain, considering that Bilbao was ill at Basque Country. So I think Landa's a good choice. Paulus, of course, crashed at Amstel Gold, so we're not sure how he's going. So again, a bit of caution towards picking Paulus. If you see any reports or anything, or if you know how Paulus is feeling after his crash, be sure to put it in the comments down below. It'd be very appreciated for for me picking my team as well. Lorenzo Rota, probably not the greatest pick. Badgioli will probably lead Soudal Quickstep because there's no Alaphilippe here. I think that he'll do okay. I think that he might come top 10, more than likely top 15. I think that, you know, he's good, but I just think there'll be better riders on the day. Costa's probably not that great. Guerrero did okay last year, but hasn't shown that form this year. Martin has looked okay in some French one-day races recently, but just doesn't really suit. It's not the kind of rider who I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to win La Fleche Wallonne or probably even come top 10. I think that maybe somebody even like Victor Lefay, or they also have Jonas Aguirre and Jesus Herrada here, so who Cofidis are going to be working for, I have no idea. Piccolo hasn't looked that great. Schmid probably doesn't see this race, neither does Sheffield. Skelmos, Jensen, I think is a good choice, but they do also have Mollema and Ciccone here, so who they're going to work for, I don't really know. I think Skelmos did come like top 20 last year. That was in his debut race here, so I think that Skelmos is a pretty good one for 14. There's also Van Wilder here. No Evenepoel, no Alaphilippe. I think they'll be working for Badgioli, but Van Wilder could certainly do a decent job. The last race he did was Catalonia, where he was just a domestique all the time, so I don't think that result's very representative of his abilities. So I think that Van Wilder could still be quite good. 12-point riders, Ciccone, I'm quite high on for this race, actually. 12 points is quite cheap when you consider how well he's been going so far this season in a lot of the stage races. I think that he could certainly crack a top 10 in this race. I just think that he's looking a bit renewed this year, is Ciccone. Something's going right with his kind of form and his training, and I think that he's actually going to be a really good choice, so I'm probably going to put him on my team. Hindley, similarly. 12th place at Amstel Gold Race, looking in really good form. I think that he could be a big surprise in this race, especially considering that it's an uphill finish and a steep one at that. I think that Hindley's really good at this. He's quite snappy in the finish. Think back to Blockhouse last year at the Giro. He's quite good against these climber types in kind of a one-day race, kind of uphill setting. So I think that Hindley could be a good one. As could Jonas Aguirre, very strong at Basque Country as well. 3rd place in GC there. I think that Jonas Aguirre could be a top 10 rider here. Cron's a bit of an interesting one, perhaps a little bit of a heavier kind of puncher type. Might not do quite as well, but he was looking good at Amstel Gold Race, so he might be leading Lotto Destiny alongside Maxime Van Hills more than likely. Lutsenko again, he very similar to Cron actually. They were side by side in Amstel Gold Race, so I think that Lutsenko's a good choice for Astana. Whether he'll come, I think he could maybe finish inside the fringes of the top 10, but more than likely like a top 15. I think for Lutsenko will be a pretty realistic finishing result for him. Volta, I had on for Amstel Gold Race, but didn't do that well, so I'm not sure what to really make of him now. I'm a little bit lost as to how I think his form is or how he's going to do, whether they'll work for Benoit or whatever. So I just think there are better 12-point riders that I've just mentioned over Volta who I'd much rather take. 10-point riders, maybe Jesus Herrada, who finished 16th in this race last year. Maybe Gino Maida did good in Paris-Nice earlier this year, so maybe he could be another one if you wanted a 10-point rider. 8-point riders, there's Kobe Kosens for Intermarché. He's been looking really good throughout this whole year. There's also James Knox, who finished 2nd on that last stage in Basque Country. He's looking pretty good recently, and I think that he, alongside a Badgioli and also Van Wilder, could also be kind of good options for Soudal Quickstep. And also Van Hills would probably be, I reckon Van Hills would probably be your safest 8-point option. I think that a top 15 is probably quite likely from him. 6-point riders, you will probably need some of these if you're wanting Pogacar and Pidcock on your team, or just some other expensive rider. Champoussin would be a pretty good one. He'll be leading Arkea more than likely. He's looked pretty decent so far this season. I can't remember which. I think he finished top 10 a couple of times in Basque Country, so watch out for him. Ferron, who finished in 13th place at Amstel, won Paris Camembert recently, so another good 6-point rider there to be picking. Total Energies don't really have a leader here, so I think that Ferron would have a pretty free card to just go and do his own thing. Gregoire, will he be working for Madouas and Godou? Yes, more than likely, but you never know when he might just be given his opportunity. Kind of similar to Strade Bianchi in that sense. So Gregoire's still a decent one, but perhaps less likely to have the leadership role. Ben Healy, on the other hand, I think everybody's kind of caught on to him as the best 6-point rider right now. He is, so far, I think on PCS, he is the number 1 rider for EF, which does hint towards me that he will be the leader for this race. Does this type of finish suit him? I'm not sure if it suits him perfectly, but he is still in such good form that I think that he could come inside the top 10. So I think that he is probably the safest and best 6-point rider that you could be going with. Other 6-point riders, maybe Victor Lefebvre. He did good in some, I can't remember, there were 2 French one-day races recently. He finished first in one of them and 7th in another one of them. He's a very good punchy rider, and I think that Lefebvre could be a bit of a surprise rider, maybe a top 20. Probably Healy's a better choice, but if you needed a second one, I'd say that Lefebvre is probably your second best one. And then, there's a couple of guys for assist points if you wanted them. There's Sobrero, who will probably be leading Jayco, but again, does he suit this type of finish? Not really, but I think he will be the leader for that team. And then you're looking at the 4-point riders really for the assist points on their respective leaders, like Mychuk on Landa. You've got Rataillou for Kuznefroy. You got Tarling for Pidcock. You got Vandenberg for Gaudu, and then you got Vink for Tadej Pogačar. So this is the team that I have right now. No Pidcock in there at the moment, but I am tempted to take out Paulus, considering that he hasn't been put as the number 1 rider for EF. It makes me a little bit kind of like cautious, like why is he not the number 1 rider? Is he not feeling that great after Amstel? Again, if anybody knows, put it in the comments down below. But I've gone with quite some good 12-point riders in Ciccone, Hindley and Izagir, and I think it's quite a well-balanced team, but I am certainly tempted to take off like a Paulus for, say, Pidcock or something like that, or somebody else who's a bit more expensive, and then take off maybe like Jon Izagir or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, but then we're going to take a look at the Classic squad game now. In this competition, I have only made the 1 transfer, and that is to put in Giulio Ciccone. And then, so in this race, I have 2 transfers left now for Liège, just because I feel like I might want to put Remco on, and therefore I've got 2 transfers left so that I can decrease one of my riders to like a 4-pointer and then boost up another one up to like Remco. So that's why I've got 2 transfers left just in case for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And at the end of the day, Liège is a higher category race, so it's worthwhile more points. So I've only made the 1 transfer in Ciccone, which means that in this race I've got Kuznefroy, Baggioli, Pogačar, Pidcock, Gaudu, Van den Bosch, Paulus and Ciccone. So I've got quite a few riders here. In terms of Liège, I'm probably thinking if Paulus doesn't do well here, I'll probably take him off for a 4-point rider, which will then give me 10 credits, and then I'll put up somebody either like Gaudu or Kuznefroy, depending on who does best, or who does worse, more than likely, at La Fleche Wallonne. And then looking at the women's team, there's a lot of good riders that you can be picking. This is the team I've got right now: Vollering, Lippert, Niewiadoma, Van Anlooy, Riolani and Santesteban. But there are a lot of good riders that you could be going with. I think Vollering is just like the de facto that you go with. Kopecky just doesn't suit this race. Van Vleuten hasn't looked that great recently. Vollering's a good pick. Elisa Borghini does do well in this race, but still quite expensive. Cavalli hasn't looked that great recently. Ashley Mulman-Passio, I think, is a good choice. I think she does really well in this race, but 26 is quite expensive. Niewiadoma, I think, is a good one. 4th place at Amstel, remember, so that's quite a good one there. Utrup Ludwig was top 10 at Amstel as well. You've got Elise Shabby, but they also have Niewiadoma, so it's kind of tricky to tell who they're going to be going with. Liana Lippert I've got on because Van Vleuten isn't looking that great, so I think that Lippert seems like a pretty good alternative. There's Labous, who's a good one as well. Like, 14 credits, that's not a lot. Perisco as well is another good one who you could be picking. 12-point riders, there's a lot of good value in here, including Castelline, including Costa, who was, I think she might have been like top 15 or maybe top 10 last year. There's also Santesteban, as I said. I think she was looking good at Amstel. Van Anlooy, 3rd at Amstel, so she could be a really good one. Baril finished in 16th last year in this race. And then, you go down and there's more and more of them as you go down. I think the best 6-point rider that I went with is Riolini, just because she won that uphill finish at UAE Tour of the Jebel Hafit, or she let Elisa Longo Borghini win up there, but she's a really good climber, so I think that she is definitely the best 6-point rider, so definitely pick her. But let me know what you're thinking all in the comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking for all your teams, the men's, the women's, etc. What kind of transfers are you thinking? Are you saving transfers for Remco, or are you dumping them all in now to try and get the most out of your riders before Liège-Bastogne-Liège? And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!